What fact is common knowledge to people who work in your field, but almost unknown to the rest of the population? The maximum spacing between spindles in a railing is 4 inch because that's the average size of a baby's head. Most building officials will carry a 4-inch sphere with them when doing inspections on new construction. Similarly, when public play structures are being evaluated, the evaluation officer brings 2 size paddles, one which is equal to the average size of a newborn's head, and one that equal to the largest average size of a child under 10. They then stick the paddles in all crevices of the play structure. If the smaller one the head can get through, the bigger one body must also be able to, otherwise the structure won't pass inspection. Most 911 calls an ambulance receives on a daily basis are not remotely close to being emergencies. EMT can confirm, about half of our calls are for patient transfers to, between hospitals. The other half of calls are 911 calls, and only half of those 911 calls are true emergencies. And the only time we use lights and sirens is when a person is in deep and staring death in the face. So if an ambulance comes up to you, L&S, movie. Out of the way, fast. Coffee shops spend more on milk than coffee. Being a civil attorney, we almost never go to jury trial and the job can be unbelievably boring. The toner in your printer is plastic being melted onto the paper. In some museums, what you see on the shelves can be less than 10% of the whole collection. For example, the Louvre has over 460,000 items in their collection, and only has space to display about 35,000 of those, roughly 6% of their total collection due to limited physical space. And for aesthetic purposes, most items in museums stay back in storage or archives. Plus, most items need to be maintained at certain temperatures and light. If we can't meet those needs, it will never be allowed for public viewing, ever. There are most likely some of the most amazing, visually stunning pieces of artwork that you or anyone will never get to see. Bonus: accession and de-accession can also be a touchy area. Just because it's old doesn't mean we're going to take it and add it to the collections, and we try to be nice to people who are disappointed we won't take their precious family heirlooms. Other times, it's easier just to say, yeah, we don't want that. Heartworms are treatable for dogs, but not for cats. Also, keep on top of your heartworm prevention for your dog. If they get heartworm but you can prove that they've been continually covered, which isn't difficult, the receipts are good enough, and your vet will have them in their database, then the heartworm prevention manufacturer will pay for the treatment. Nominal pipe diameters are not indicative of their actual diameter, so a one pipe is rarely actually one in either outside or inside diameter. Why? I have no idea. But if you drill a hole of exact diameter and stick that pipe in there, you're going to have a bad time. I worked as an insurance adjuster. Most people have no idea what homeowners insurance actually does. Here is a very simple guide to understanding what is covered by homeowners insurance. A sudden and one-time occurrence. While there are some exceptions to this, understanding those few words will help you understand 95% of what is and is not covered by your policy. Note: my experience applies to US insurance only. Neurodegenerative diseases. Alzheimer's, Parkinson, starts way before the first symptoms appears. No one wake up suddenly one day with Alzheimer's. From actual data, it seems that the disease is rampant for 10 to 15 years before the first symptoms. Some research say that you can start identifying abnormalities 20+ years before the memory loss begin, and it works for all neurodegenerative diseases as far as I know. An elevator will go up to the top of the hoist instead of crash to the floor in most catastrophic failures due to the counterweights. In scoring for film, the orchestra ensemble actually plays the music live as the movie is played behind them. It is recorded and synced. Virtually every piece of copper, aluminum, or steel you come across has been chopped to bits, refined, melted down and used to make whatever object it's a part of, dozens, if not hundreds of times. Copper pipe probably started out as hundreds of different wires from various devices from around the world at one point. There is a surprising amount of infrastructure under your feet. You'd be surprised how much public utility runs underneath private property. Always call before you dig. We had a garden in our backyard growing up. I used to dig in the spots where my mom didn't have any plants growing. I decided one morning that I was going to dig to China. I was young. Okay, and kept going until I hit a thick black cord. I stabbed at it with the shovel, and saw all sorts of colors inside it. I thought I'd found some treasure, but what I was actually looking at was dozens of individual wires inside the cord. And what I'd done was take out the cable TV for the entire street. You would think all the heavily relied upon server infrastructures were super secure and highly redundant. You would be wrong. There is no difference between a violin and a fiddle other than how you play it. When you delete a file from your HD, only the information of how to reach these memory slots coherently is deleted. The raw information remains there until overwritten. That's why companies should destroy the disks on decommission instead of just formatting them. You don't defibrillate asystole flatline cardiac rhythm like they do on TV. It's a non-shockable rhythm. Also that the survival rate of a cardiac arrest and CPR is only around 10%. Most people think it's more like 75% of the time, and it's nowhere close. Edit. About 40% of those who receive CPR survive immediately after. 10% is those who survive long enough to leave the hospital. No one is going to see your website if you don't have a strategy to drive traffic there. For whatever reason, people seem to think if you put something online, people are, at best, going to flock to it in droves, or at worst at least stumble across it accidentally. But that's 100% not going to happen. Nobody's just going to stumble on your website. It's like putting a restaurant on the moon, not telling anybody about it, then wondering why no one's eating there. An electrical engineer isn't an electrician. Office copiers cost upwards of $7,000. Some can go for $15,000 to $20,000 depending on print speed and capacity. Your new house you just built probably has much better insulation than your old house from the 70s. Since the house is much more energy efficient, the size of the furnace and/or air conditioner may be smaller than what you had at your old house, even if the new house is larger. No, we can't use rules of thumb to size your HVAC equipment no matter what Google says. We have to use a load calculation, and that has to be approved by the building department. Bonus. Having an HVAC system that runs all the time but just barely gets you to the temperature you want is more energy efficient than a larger system that turns off and on all of the time, even if it seems like the system is running constantly. In jewelry, a diamond is a luxury expense, not an investment. Gold is the investment. If you try to sell your engagement ring, you'll get maybe 20% of what you initially paid for it. Jewelers can get diamonds for a fraction of what you paid for it. Touching your fresh tattoo with your unwashed fingers is bad. It's absurd how many times we have to tell this to people. If you stick your eardrum with an object, you will start to cough. This happens because the nerves interconnect. I hope this information helps you in future battles. A black belt isn't a martial art god. They're just an advanced student. Most people are not good at detecting lies, and consistently score no better than chance 50-50 when tested. The score goes up slightly when it's someone they know that they're talking to, but not much. Ironically, most people rate themselves as very good at detecting lies, but they're wrong. A corporate policy of requiring users to change their passwords every 90 days does not make your system more secure. It tends to actually make things less secure. I've been trying to run this up the chain where I work, but they're so set in their ways, and because corporate says so. Okay, I don't want to hear you guys complaining when someone picks up the sticky notes around the office shop with people's usernames and passwords written on them and messes everything up. And then you have the ones where it can't be anything related to the previous passwords you've used. Do not hold your breath while ascending up through water. Unless of course that breath came from the surface to begin with. Then you're okay. That if your IT guy is not busy, he is doing a good job, not a bad one, and you don't need to fire them. I literally quit a job because they accused me of being lazy after I had put in up to 80-hour weeks for a year and finally got things under control, so just didn't have much to do after that. All processors begin as top of the line and then may end up lower because they didn't make the threshold. Explaining with an example, Intel only tries to make i9 processors. Let's say they have 16 cores. Since the process of making these is hard, only 20 to 30% have all cores working. Next they see the amount processors with more than or equal to 8 cores. Disable extra cores just to make sure only 8 cores work and ship them as i7. Next 4, 5, 6 and 7 have only 4 cores left working and shipped as i5. 2 and 3 only 2 cores are left operating and all others are switched off. Shipped as i3. Cracking joints does not cause arthritis. And the sound isn't bones cracking, it's normally nitrogen gas escaping from your joint cavity.